Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for this Level 1 umpiring course hosted by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Abdullah Steenkamp, and my co-presenter for this evening is Tom Karosi. We will cover laws 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 this evening, where I will cover laws 12 till 15, and then I'll hand over to Tom, who will do laws 16, 17, and 18. We will follow our usual format of the presenting. We'll probably finish about 7:30. We will then open the floor for Q&A, but in the meantime, if you do think of a question, please put it in the chat box while I'm presenting. Law 12 covers the start of play and the cessation of play. And I'll use our test match times as an example in South Africa, where play starts at 10 o'clock and the close of play is at 5 o'clock. So what indicates the start of play? So practically, usually what happens, let's say day one of our test match starts at 10 o'clock. Umpires will take the field at 9:55, followed by the fielding side, and then the batters. Umpires will choose their ends. Fielding side will then choose which ends they're going to bowl from, and then the batters will choose who's going to bowl the first, who's going to face the first delivery. Then what happens? Umpires will then check the field, count the players, make sure the scorers are ready, batters are ready, the fielding side's ready, and then the law tells us bowlers and umpire needs to call play. And this call of play signals the start of the match. And you also need to call play on the resumption of play after any interval or interruption. Or let's say the next day starting at 10 o'clock, again, you will call play. So play indicates the start of the match or the start of the day or the start after an on the resumption of play after any interval or interruption. So the call of time indicates the cessation of play before any interval or interruption and at the conclusion of the match. So give an example of when we call time. Day one of our test match starting at 10. So we now know we need to call play before the first ball gets bowled. Our sessions are 2 hours, so from 10 till 12. So when we get to lunchtime, let's say the sixth ball of the over gets bowled, and you look at your watch and you see it's 12 o'clock. The bowlers in umpire will then call over time and will then say lunch as well to indicate to the players that it is now lunchtime. So as soon as the umpire calls time, bails needs to be removed from both sets of wickets. So it's lunchtime, 12 o'clock, umpire, bowlers in umpire calls overtime and lunch. Then bowlers in umpire needs to remove the bails from the bowlers in, and the strikers in umpire needs to remove the bails at his or her end. So we know that the session, we play 2 hour sessions in test matches from 10 till 12, 12:40 till 14:40, and then 3 till 5. So when do we start a new over? So we need to try to get as many overs in as possible in your session. So you start at 10, we know lunch is at 12. So for that 2 hour session, you need to try to get as many overs in as possible. But when do you start a new over? So the law guides us by telling us another over shall always be started at any time during the match unless you need to take an interval. So if the umpire walking at normal pace arrived at his or her position behind the stumps at the bowler's end before the agreed time for the next interval, you need to start another over. I'll use an example to illustrate this. Our session in our test match starts at 10. We know lunch is at 12 o'clock. So we get to 11:56 and we start another over. When the sixth ball gets bowled of the over, we look at our watch and we see now it's 11:59. Do we take lunch? No, we cannot take lunches because it's not 12 o'clock yet. So now the law guides us. Do we start a new over? Don't we start a new over? So now what the umpires need to do is they need to walk at normal pace. And if the bowler's in umpire gets to behind the stumps at the bowler's in before 12 o'clock, you'll start a new over. If the bowlers in the now bowlers in umpire don't get behind the stumps before 12, let's say while he or she's still walking to get behind the stumps at bowlers in, look at their watch and it now turns 12 o'clock, you will then call time and lunch. Completion of the over. If the agreed time for the interval is reached during an over, you need to first complete the over before the interval is taken. There is an exception, and we'll get to the exception next. Just an example to illustrate what the law is trying to tell us. We know in our test match times, or our session is from 10 till 12. We know lunchtime is at 12 o'clock. So now at 11:59, we start a new over. Now we get to 12 o'clock and we've only bowled 2 balls in the over. So do we take lunch? We've now reached 12 o'clock, but we've bowled 2 balls. The law tells us, no, we cannot take lunch. We first need to complete the over. Then we can take lunchtime. So we first need to complete the 4 balls, and let's say it takes us, the 6th legal ball gets bowled at 12:03. We will then at 12:03 call over, time, and lunch will be from 12:03, and the first ball after lunch needs to be bowled at 12:43. I mentioned that there is an exception, and what is that exception? When less than 3 minutes remains before the agreed time for the next interval, you will take the interval immediately if a batter is dismissed or a batter retires or the players needs to leave the field. Even if this happens mid-over. I'll use an example to illustrate this. We know our lunchtime is at 12 o'clock. At 11:58, a wicket falls. What happens next? Must the new batter come in to let's say it happened, a wicket fell, third ball of the over. So it's only 11:58. Must the new batter come in and complete the over? The law tells us no. If when less than 3 minutes remains before the time for our interval, a wicket falls, we can take interval when that wicket falls. So in our example, the wicket fell at 11:58. So we will take lunch immediately. Lunch will be from 11:58 until 12:38. First ball after lunch needs to be bowled at 12:38. Only if a wicket falls or a batter retires or you need to leave the field with less than 3 minutes to go to your interval. In more day cricket, and that is what we focus on in the laws of cricket, there's this concept of the last hour of the match and a certain number of overs needs to be bowled in this last hour. So what is this last hour of in a test match? So a test match spans over 5 days. Day 1 starts at 10 and ends at 5. Same hours for day 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the last hour of the match is in our test match, day number 5. And last hour can only find on your last day. So day number 5, the last hour of our test match is from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And the law wants a certain number of overs to be bowled in this last hour. For those of you that's going to do level 2 and level 3 with us later in the year, there we're going to go into much more detail when it comes to the last hour and the number of overs. But for now, I just want you to understand that in the laws of cricket, there is this concept of there is a last hour in the game. And in our test match, the last hour is on day 5. And with our cessation time being 5 o'clock, last hour is from 4 till 5. And the law wants, and again, emphasis on the law requires a minimum of 20 overs to be bowled in the last hour. So you can bowl a minimum. You need to bowl a minimum. You can bowl more. You can bowl 30 overs in the last hour, 40. But just the law wants a minimum number of overs to be bowled. So how this the law works is our last hour starts at 5. We now know it ends at last hour starts at 4 and it ends at 5, and we now know we need to bowl a minimum of 20 in the last hour. So in an example, if we get to 1650 and we've bowled 20 overs, what happens next? We need to continue playing because we need to bowl a minimum of 20. And why do we continue playing? Yes, we bowled 20, but we need to bowl a minimum. And we continue because we have not reached our close of play time, our cessation time yet. Our cessation time is 5 o'clock. We need to continue playing for the extra 10 minutes. In another example, let's say our last hour starts at 4 and we get to 5 o'clock and the fielding side's only bowled 15 overs. What happens next? They need to continue playing. They need to bowl another 5 overs because the law wants a minimum of 20 to be bowled in the last hour. Yes, the overhead was slow. They've only bowled 15 in the last hour. So we get to 5 o'clock. We need to continue playing and we need to bowl a further 5 more overs. So this is just the concept of the last hour. In level 2 and 3, we're going to go into it in much more detail. So when is the match concluded? When is the match at its end? Firstly, as soon as the result is reached, the game is done. Match is concluded. Let's say South Africa plays Sri Lanka and South Africa needs 300 to win in their second innings. When they get to 300, the result is reached, game is done. According to the law, match is now concluded. Match is also concluded as soon as both the minimum number of overs in your last hour are completed and the agreed time for close of play is reached, game is also done. In case of an agreement under law 13.1.2, we're going to get to that in the next law, and I'm going to go into detail there. But for now, the match is also concluded if there was an agreement to play the match over specific time or specific overs. Once those specific times reached or specific overs are reached, the game is also concluded. And then lastly, game is also done. Match is concluded if the players leave the field due to adverse conditions, example rain or bad light, and no play is possible, and you haven't reached a result yet, you haven't completed your minimum number of overs in the last hour yet, but the players are now off, it is raining or it is too dark, and you've reached your cessation time on day 5, now the match is also concluded. Law 13 covers the innings. We know in Test match cricket gets played over 2 innings. So are all matches played over 2 innings? The law allows actually for flexibility. The law allows for games to be played over 1 or 2 innings as long as this agreement is reached before the game. Because I know there are some competition that do play more than cricket, but they only play it over 1 innings. But mostly modern cricket gets played over 2 innings, like in Test match cricket, each side gets 2 innings. Flexibility that the law also allow when it comes to these innings. The law allows for these innings to be limited to a certain number of overs or to a certain number of time. Like in Test match cricket, there are no limit, no time limit, no overs limit when it comes to your innings. So you can bat as long as you want in your first or your second innings. There's also no time limit. But there is flexibility in the law because they know not all games can be played over 5 days. There are more cricket that gets played over less days. So the law allows this flexibility where you can agree to limit any innings to a number of overs or a period of time. And if you do so, and if it is a 1 innings match, both innings needs to be exactly the same. If you decide in a one innings match, you're going to have 60 overs per side, then it needs to be 60 for both teams. Or if you put a time limit to it, each side can one innings per side, and they need to bat for 3 hours. Then it needs to be 3 hours for both innings. More flexibility that the law allows. If there is a two innings match, similar agreements needs to apply to either the first innings of each side or the second or both. So if you do put in place that the first innings needs to be a max of 60 overs, then that 60 overs needs to be exactly the same for both sides. You can do exactly the same for the second innings. You can have a game as long as it's agreed before the time. First innings, max 60 overs per side. Second innings, max 50 overs per side. As long as these agreements are made before the game and the law allows for this flexibility. The law also wants, when it comes to a two innings match, innings is to be taken alternately. You cannot, there are two exceptions, and we'll get to that in later laws, but you cannot have a captain, let's say in a test match, come to you and say, umpires, we want to bat both our first and second innings one go, and then the other side can bat their first and second innings one go. No, the law wants innings to be taken alternately. There are two exceptions, and the one is the follow on, and the other one is a forfeiture. We'll get to it in later law. So when is an innings completed? Firstly, as soon as the side's all out, as soon as 10 wickets fall, side's innings is completed. Side innings is also completed at the fall of a wicket or the retirement of a batter. There are balls still to be bowled, but there's no more batters to come in. Side innings is also completed when a captain declares the innings close. When a captain forfeits the innings also completed. And lastly, in the previous slide, I mentioned that you can have an agreement where you have a certain number of overs to an innings or a prescribed time to an innings. And if that is the case, let's use 60 overs as an example. First innings 60 overs. So as soon as side A bats and they get to 60 overs, that innings is completed no matter what the score is, no matter how many wickets are they down, innings is completed. Same principle will apply to time. If it was decided that first innings maximum of 3 hours, as soon as you get to 3 hours, that innings is then completed. When it comes to the toss, where does the toss take place? Who needs to be at the toss? What are the times? When do the toss takes place? The law guides us, and let's see what it says. Firstly, when it comes to who needs to be there, captains needs to be at the toss. Both captains needs to be there, and one or both umpires also needs to be present at the toss. Preferably both umpires, but if only one is available, then the umpire needs to be there and both captains. So now we know who needs to be there. Where does the toss take place? According to the law, anywhere on the field of play, anywhere inside the boundary, the toss can take place. So according to the law, if you just step over the rope inside the boundary, you can actually toss just inside the field of play. But we know traditionally, where does the toss take place? Traditionally, the toss takes place right next to the match pitch. So now we know who needs to be there. We know where it takes place. Let's see when does the toss needs to take place. There's a window period for the toss to take place, and they have a 15-minute window period. So if our game starts at 10 o'clock, our test match day one starts at 10 o'clock, the window period for the toss needs to be between 9:30 and 9:45. So anywhere between 9:30 and 9:45, that's when the toss takes place. So can the toss take place at 9:30? Yes, it can. Can it take place at 9:35? Of course it can. 9:40? Yes. 9:45? Yes. 9:48? No. It's outside the window period. Similarly with, can the toss take place at 9:25? No, outside the window period. There's only a 15-minute window period for the toss. So now we've taken the toss. Captain wins the toss. Captain then needs to decide to bowl or to bat. And the law wants that decision to be made immediately. That the captain winning the toss needs to notify the umpires and the opposing captain immediately. That captain cannot tell you, umpire, yes, I know I've won the toss, but just give me 5 minutes. I want to discuss this with my coach and my team. I'll get back to you. You need to tell the captain, no, you should have had this discussion before coming to the toss. You need to give us an answer immediately. Are you going to bowl or bat? And once that decision's been made, it then cannot be changed. The follow on, and I mentioned this earlier. So in the law, there is this concept of the follow on, and how this follow on works is in a 2 innings match of 5 days or more, like in our test match. And if a side which bat first and they lead by at least 200 runs, they have the option, and the option is there. They don't have to take the option. It's up to the captain to whether he or she wants to exercise the option. And if they do want to exercise the option, they can ask the other side to go bat again. So 2 innings match, 5 days or more, which is our test match, the lead needs to be at least 200 runs. So how does this work? I'll give you an example. Let's say South Africa scored 600 in their first innings, and they dismiss Sri Lanka for 395 in their first innings. So now, because the lead is 205 runs, the captain of South Africa have the option of asking Sri Lanka to go bat again in their second innings. The option is there. The captain does not have to take the option. If the captain feels they want to go bat again, absolutely no problem. But the option is on the table to ask Sri Lanka to go bat again. But the lead must be at least 200 runs. In our case, it's 205. That's why the option is on the table. If South Africa dismiss Sri Lanka for 405, then the lead would have been 195. Then the option is not on the table. South Africa needs to then go bat in their second innings. So this is in a 2 innings match of 5 days or more, which an example is test matches. But we know not all games are played over 5 days. Like in South Africa, the provincial competition spans over 4 days. We also have a 3-day provincial matches. And in those matches that spans over 4 or 3 days, there the lead needs to be 150 and not 200 like in a 5-day test match. So the same principle would apply in a 3 or 4-day game. Just the lead needs to be 150. In a 2-day match, lead needs to be 100. And in a 1-day match, 75 run the lead needs to be. Before I get to point 3, point 2, in terms of notification, and if the captain decides to exercise the option of asking the side to go back again. So like in my first example where South Africa scored 600, they dismissed Sri Lanka for 395, so the lead was 205. So then the option was on the table to ask Sri Lanka to go follow on. So if the intention is to ask Sri Lanka to go follow on, they can. They need to inform the umpires. Umpires in turn will inform the captain of Sri Lanka that they need to go back again. And once the decision has been made, it then cannot be changed afterwards. First day's play lost. And the emphasis here is it needs to be the first day's play that are lost. So no play needs to take place on the first day of a match of more than 1 day's duration. So in our test match, the first day needs to be washed out. Let's say we get to day 1 of our test match, supposed to start at 10 o'clock. But due to inclement weather, it rains we don't start at 10 o'clock. The whole day is washed out. At 5 o'clock, end of the days, we'll come back tomorrow morning. We'll start at 10 o'clock. Now the law tells us, because we lost the whole first day of play, so now when it comes to the follow-on target, you need to now look at how many days remaining. So in our test match, there are 4 days remaining. And now we need to look at what the lead is, or what the lead should be for a 4-day game. If I could go back to our previous slide, we know that for a 3 or 4-day game, the lead needs to be 150 runs. So in our test match, that started on day 2 because we had no play on day 1, and because of that, the follow-on lead is now 150 for this particular test match. But we need to lose the first day's play. In another example, let's say in our test match, South Africa wins the toss, day 1, clear day, we play. We start at 10, we finish at 5. Day 2 is supposed to start at 10, but we lose the whole of day 2. Not a single ball was bowled on day 2. We get to day 3, and we start at 10 o'clock. So now the question, what should the lead be in terms of follow-on? In this example, the lead stay 200 runs. And why? Because yes, we lost the day's play, but we lost day 2. And because we lost day 2, lead stays at 2 o'clock at 200 runs. The law is clear. It needs to be the first day's play lost. And if we lose the first day, now the lead, the follow-on lead becomes less. The last law that I'm covering this evening before I hand over to Tom, it covers declaration and forfeiture. In terms of a declaration, captain of the batting side can declare innings closed at any time during that innings. The UC needs to wait till the ball is dead, and as soon as the ball is dead, captain can declare that innings. Whether it's at the end of the over, whether it's midway through the over, doesn't matter. If the captain wants to declare an innings, even if 3 balls are bowled, as soon as the ball is dead, even though it's midway through the innings, through the over, captain can declare that innings. In terms of the forfeiture of an innings, captain may forfeit either of his side's innings anytime before the commencement of that innings. And we saw earlier when that a forfeited innings to be considered a completed innings. And as soon as the captain decided whether it's time for he or she wants to declare or they're going to forfeit the innings, soon as that decision is made, the umpires are informed. Umpires then in turn would inform the opposing captain, and once notified, the decision then cannot be changed afterwards. In the history of Test match cricket, there was only one example of a forfeiture, and it happened in a Test match between South Africa and England in 2000. There was lots of inclement weather around, and the captain at the time, the late Hansie Cronje, and Nasser Hussain was the captain of England. They then agreed to for innings to be forfeit. The result was reached in the game, but later on, it was found out that there was match fixing, and this result of this particular game, and the only example of a forfeiture in a test match, was actually scrapped from the record books. You will not find this test match anywhere in the record books of test match cricket. Tom, thank you so much. That's all I'm covering this evening. I'm now handing the baton over to you. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. Good evening to you and good evening to all the course candidates. I will be taking you through laws 16, 17, and 18. And today we're going to start with some revision questions for the first time in the course. So please all be ready to answer in the chat box and participate in some of the questions that I will be asking based on my presentation this evening. So we start with Law 16, which is the result. And here we shall see how exactly the scorers report a result and what the different results are in specific cricket matches. Abdullah has mentioned that a match can either be a 1 innings per side match or a 2 innings per side match. So let's look at how a team is able to win a 2 innings per side match. Law tells us that the side which has scored a total of runs in excess of that scored in the 2 completed innings of the opposing side shall win the match. And what's quite important in that statement is that the side losing the match needs to have completed their 2 innings. Abdullah went through the definition of a completed innings, and the most common way that a innings is completed is a side being bowled out. So keep that in mind for our quiz question later. What about a 1 innings per side match? Law tells us that the side which has scored in its 1 innings a total of runs in excess of that scored by the opposing side in its 1 completed innings shall win the match. And in limited overs cricket, we are currently in the middle of the Champions Trophy held in Pakistan, and 50 overs in a one-day international constitutes a completed innings. So keep that in mind as well for the result of a 1 innings per side match. Can umpires award a match? Yes, indeed. Law tells us that a match shall be lost by a side which either concedes defeat or, in the opinion of the umpires, refuses to play. If so, the umpires shall award the match to the other side. If an umpire considers that an action by any players or players might constitute a refusal by either side to play, then the umpires together shall ascertain the course of action. If they then decide together that this action does indeed constitute a refusal to play by one side, they shall so inform the captain of that side. If the captain persists in the action, the umpires shall award the match to the non-defaulting side. This is a very controversial way of a result occurring in a cricket match, and we will see a video of a refusal to play where a match was awarded to the non-defaulting side. What's important is for us to know all the reasons and probably to ask or to consult with a higher power before we as umpires award a match. I'm now going to show you a video of the only time in Test match cricket that a match was awarded by umpires. And I will then discuss afterwards maybe how better it could have been handled. And there are, from the narrators of this particular video, some suggestions as well.
Over the last 140 years, more than 2,300 test matches have been played. Over 1,500 of these have ended in a result. Over 700 have been drawn, 2 have been tied, and only 1 has ended in a forfeit.
thing I remember about the forfeit test is none of us had a clue what was going on, really.
According to law 16.3.2, a match shall be lost by a side which, in the opinion of the umpires, refuses to play. On August 20, 2006, this rule was invoked for the first time on an afternoon that swung wildly between high drama and farce. An hour before tea on the fourth day, at the end of the 56th over of England's second innings, umpires Darrell Hare and Billy Doctrove asked for a change of ball.
It was one of the reserve umpires came out with a new box of balls. It was clear they were changing the ball. No big deal there. But instead of asking the bowling side to choose the new one, he asked the batting side, and you think, oh, hello, interesting.
The umpires then awarded England 5 penalty runs, confirming that they had pulled Pakistan up for tampering with the ball. The trouble was there was no evidence, no jelly, no dirt, no sandpaper.
A lot of people that looked at that ball have different opinions. Some feel it was clearly tampered with, and some think it was more than just playable. It was a good-looking ball. Others think you can see some evidence of scratching, but none that suggests it's been done on purpose and by hand, or even by a foreign object. So very mixed views.
It was after the tea break, taken more than 15 overs, after the 5-run penalty, that things really escalated. The umpires walked out, the English batsmen walked out, the Pakistanis didn't.
They felt hugely wronged, you know, they weren't sure that whether they wanted to come out.
After waiting for 20 minutes, the umpires walked to the Pakistan dressing room, came back a few minutes later and took the bails off.
And the match is aborted or abandoned or cancelled or no, wrong, none of that. We hear the match has been awarded to England. Wow.
That wasn't the end of it either. After a protest lasting almost an hour and following discussions with match referee Mike Proctor, Inzamam Ul-Haq finally leads the Pakistan team out again. This time, though, the umpires stay put. They've made their decision and they're sticking by it.
My view of that was that it was very inflexible. Mike Proctor was the match referee in a very difficult position. I think there should have been an instruction from on high, from the chief executive or chairman of ICC, that this is a unique situation because of the unproven circumstances. In a proven circumstance of a tampered ball and a side refusing to come out, fair enough, but this was unproven.
Several hours after the bails were taken off, the ICC and the English and Pakistan cricket boards confirm in a joint statement that the match had indeed been forfeited. The hits kept on coming. With no evidence to back up the accusation, the ICC dropped the ball tampering charges. But Inzamam was banned for 4 one-dayers for refusing to lead his team out. They also removed Hare from international duty, who in turn threatened to sue the ICC and the PCB for racial discrimination. 2 years later, the ICC overturned the result from a Pakistan loss to a draw. But the MCC refused to recognize this.
It was all incredibly nasty and another stain on the game. And there's never been any concrete proof that Pakistan were in the wrong anyway.
To date, this remains the only scorecard in history to state England awarded the match, opposition refused to play. In the end, though, there was only one real loser: cricket itself.
I think the lesson we can take from that video is that us as umpires need to firstly be very certain if we are going to penalize a team for ball tampering. It is a very contentious issue in the match of cricket, in any game of cricket. And we need to have concrete evidence before we can penalize either side for ball tampering or changing the condition of the ball illegally. And then secondly, if we If a team refuses to play, we need to find out exactly why they refuse to play, and we need to encourage them to play even if it's under protest. If they still refuse to play under protest, then we need to call anybody who is involved in the match in a higher capacity, say, for example, a tournament director or a local leagues committee member here in Western Province Cricket Association. They would then make the call that, yes, we can award the match to the non-defaulting side, or no, hang on, the local leagues committee member will be coming to the field and will discuss it with the captain of the side which refuses to play before we decide to award the match to the non-defaulting side. You can see all the implications that the decision had, and it was a bitter taste for all involved to swallow that particular incident. So we have learnt about the win. We've learnt about a match being awarded. We also have two other types of results. A tie is the result of a match shall be a tie when all innings have been completed and the scores are equal. Very important in this definition is that all innings have to be completed. Keep in mind that statement when it comes to the quiz question that will be posted shortly. What about a draw? And a draw can only happen in Morday cricket. The result of a match shall be a draw when it is not determined by any of the ways stated above. Outside of law, we do also have a no result when, for example, a 50-over match, only one team is able to bat when the rain comes down and the team B is not able to bat. That again is included in the playing conditions for limited overs cricket. That is why it is not mentioned in the laws of cricket. Remember that the laws of cricket are closely related to Morday cricket and in particular test match cricket. You won't have a no result in test matches. You would have a draw if the entire match was rained out. So let's watch a video from December 1996. Zimbabwe against England, a test match played in Bulawayo. And England were chasing 205 runs in the fourth innings of the match to win. And they ended up only scoring 204 runs. The question that you need to answer is, what is the result of this test match? Is it a draw or is it a tie? I'm going to play the video. It is the last over of the match before time ran out. As Abdullah mentioned, in the last hour of a Morday cricket match, which is on the last day of that particular match, law tells us that 20 overs need to be bowled, but the playing conditions for test match cricket require a minimum of 15 overs to be bowled in the last hour. So this was the last of the 15 overs bowled in the last hour. And of course, Zimbabwe bowled that 15 overs in probably more than an hour, so there wasn't more time to bowl more than 15 overs. So let's watch this video for about 6 minutes. And as mentioned, please type into the chat box at the end of the video, what is the result of this test match? Is it a draw or is it a tie? And the commentators will give you some clues.
Heath Streak will be the bowler. England will be smiling at the end of this over. They need 13 runs to win this match. Zimbabwe in no hurry. Campbell's going to make sure that every corner of this boundary is patrolled. Streak tonight.
One boundary, anything could happen.
Down the leg side. Perfectly legitimate today. One ball gone with no runs scored.
One-day cricket, it would be illegal. In Test cricket, it's quite legitimate. So they bowled very well, Heath Streak, and particularly Guy Whittle, I think, who came on. And the game was probably still in England's favour, but used to have dragged it back and bowled very well.
Knight's got it out to long off. Darren Gough prepared to sacrifice his wicket, but he's got back for 2. Flower, the fielder, making sure there'd be no overthrow, allowed England back for 2. I think Zimbabwe will settle for that. That's what Knight's looking for. He's chipped it over his head for 6. Unbelievable. Nick Knight's got his streak away over mid-wicket for 6 runs. Now England are back in it. England now need 5 runs to win off 3 balls. The England supporters are going crazy.
5 or 3 balls. Does he leave everyone on the boundary or does he bring someone in?
Nick Knight, the hero of the hour now. That 6 runs has made all the difference. Have a look at this.
If you keep firing it in the same area, the batsman will eventually be able to adjust, and that's what's happened here. Nick Knight, 92 not out now. 1 6 5 fours, and that has changed everything. 5 runs now needed from 3 balls.
A lot of critics of one-day cricket, but that shot would never have been played in a test match 15 years ago. Here's Streak tonight. England require 5. It's wide outside the off stump. No signal from umpire Ian Robinson. England now requiring 5 off 2. How does Heath Streak feel?
That is a wide. Sorry, that is a
Full toss. Knight can only get it away for 1. Gough will definitely come back for the second run. He's made it with a dive. Streak can't take the ball cleanly. England scramble 2, 3 to win off the last ball. We've seen one-day finishes all over the world. We've never seen a test match finish like this. Now the batsmen are in conference. The big 3 for Zimbabwe in conference. Campbell has told the bowler what to do. He goes out onto the boundary edge. Andy Flower wishes Heath Streak good luck. Nick Knight takes a few deep breaths. England need 3 runs to win off the very last ball to win this test match. Can Nick Knight conjure up another boundary? One feel it has to be a boundary now for England to win this match. Here comes Streak. Knight's down the track, he's got it out to deep cover, there's a man there. This too will bring the scores level. Andy Flower's got it. Darren Gough vainly goes for the 3rd runs. The scores are level, but the match is drawn. England finished tantalisingly. 1 run short. They couldn't get the final run. Nick Knight finishes on 96 not out. What a test match day we've seen here in Bulawayo. England finish just 1 run short. Controversial tactics from Zimbabwe as they fire the ball wide either side of the wicket. I'm sure England would have done the same thing in their situation. This is test match cricket, remember. Zimbabwe have fought all the way and out of the fire have salvaged a draw.
That was.
So let's have a look at the final scores. England needing 205 runs to win, managed to score 204 for 6 wickets. when the last over of the last hour was completed. So my question to you, please type your answer into the chat box. What is the result of this test match? Is it a draw or is it a tie? Please type into the chat box now. 16.1 draw or 16.1 tie. And please make sure you do type in 16.1 because there are further questions to come this evening. So when we are reading through the answers after the presentation, it will help to have the 16.1 before your answer. We will get to the answers of the quiz questions after my presentation. If a boundary is scored before the batters have completed sufficient runs to win the match, the whole of the boundary allowance shall be credited to the side's total, and in the case of a hit by the bat, to the striker's score. Let me give you an example to illustrate this point. If Australia need 3 runs to win a match, and Glenn Maxwell is at the crease and hits the ball, then if they touch down for the first run and then the ball goes over the boundary, then because that 1 run that was ran was not sufficient to win the match, then the entire boundary 4 will count to Glenn Maxwell's total as well as Australia's total. And that is why sometimes you will find that a team batting second goes over the target by 1, 2, or 3 runs because a boundary was hit as the last scoring shot to win the game. Statement of results. If the side batting last wins the match without losing all of its wickets, the result shall be stated as a win by the number of wickets still then to fall. And I will give you an example of that shortly. Before I started presenting, New Zealand needed 6 runs to beat Bangladesh in the latest Champions Trophy match. And so I was wanting to copy and paste that result into the presentation, but they didn't get over the line before I could copy and paste that result. So I will merely display it to you shortly. The result that is on display is if a side fielding last wins the match, the result shall be stated as a win by the number of runs. As an example, South Africa beat Afghanistan on Friday, the 21st of February. In their opening ICC Champions Trophy match, South Africa scored 315 runs for 6 wickets, and Afghanistan were bowled out for 208 runs. So South Africa won the match by 107 runs. How do we get to 107 runs? If you take South Africa's score of 315 minus Afghanistan's score of 208, the difference is 107 runs. Let me quickly share with you what is on Crick Info at the moment as the result of New Zealand against Bangladesh. And I will share my screen again shortly. Please bear with me. Share screen. Here we have the result of today's match. New Zealand, Bangladesh batted first they scored 236 runs for 9 wickets in their allotted 50 overs, and New Zealand batted second. They scored 240 runs. So there's an example of where a team batting second finished with a boundary. The scores were probably level on 236 when the winning boundary 4 was hit to get to New Zealand's score of 240 runs for 5 wickets. And the statement of the result is New Zealand won by 5 wickets. How do we get to 5 wickets? A team, when they are all out, is 10 wickets. So the margin of victory by wickets is the number of wickets you had in hand or that you did not lose. So a maximum of 10 minus what was lost by New Zealand is 5, gives us a winning margin for New Zealand of 5 wickets. I'm sure you, being cricket lovers, all are aware of the statement of cricket results. So let's go back to the statement of results. We, of course, have also witnessed a forfeiture of a match by Pakistan against England in a test match in 2006. Law tells us that if the match is decided by one side conceding defeat or refusing to play, the result shall be stated as match conceded or match awarded, whichever the case may be. What if there are mistakes in scoring? Law tells us that if, after the players and umpires have left the field in the belief that the match has been concluded, and then subsequently the umpires discovered that a mistake in scoring has occurred which affects the result, then they shall adopt the following procedures. If the side batting last has not completed its innings, and either the number of overs to be bowled in the last hour or in that innings has not been completed, or the agreed time for close of play or for the end of the innings has not been reached, and unless one side concedes defeat, the umpires shall order play to resume. So we will go back onto the field until a result is correctly reached. Unless a result is reached sooner, play will then continue if weather, light, and ground conditions permit, until the prescribed number of overs has been completed and either time for close of play has been reached or the allotted time for the innings has expired, as appropriate. And no account shall be taken of the time between going off and the resumption of play if you are using time to determine when a match shall end. So quite important, as and when you go off the field, assuming that the match has correctly come to a conclusion, you need to confirm with the scorers that they are happy that the result has been reached, and both scorers need to agree, and then you can happily conclude the day. If both scorers are not satisfied that the match is complete, you need to ensure that they agree. And if you do find that there was a mistake in scoring and that a result hasn't actually been reached, then you need to go back onto the field and continue play until a result is reached. Once the umpires have agreed with the scorers the correctness of the scores at the conclusion of the match, the result cannot thereafter be changed. In Western Province Cricket Association club cricket matches, we used to have physical scorecards, which both captains would sign at the end of the match, with the match result written in by the scorers, and that would be the confirmation of the result. Once that has been signed, then that result is considered final. That is law 16 done, the result. Now we move on to law 17, the over. I'm sure you all know the ball shall be bowled from each end alternately in overs of 6 legal deliveries. When does an over start? Law tells us that an over has started when the bowler starts his or her run-up, or if he or she does not have a run-up, when the bowling action of the first delivery starts, and that is when the back foot of the bowler lands in his or her delivery stride. I must say I've never seen a bowler without a run-up or even a walk-up. The late great Shane Warne, close to retirement, used to take 1 or 2 steps before entering into his bowling action. Those 1 or 2 steps that he took before his bowling action were considered his run-up. Therefore, that first step of his first delivery would be considered the start of the over. Validity of balls. Which balls count as legal delivery? Law tells us that a ball shall not count as one of the 6 legal deliveries of the over unless it is delivered. We will learn on Thursday about when we need to call and signal dead ball as umpires, and when a dead ball does not count as a legal delivery in the over. One of the examples is when a bowler gets through his action, but for whatever reason does not deliver the ball. That, of course, will not be considered a legal delivery. We will call and signal dead ball, and that ball needs to be re-bowled. What about a ball that has been delivered? When will it not count as a legal delivery? If a ball that is delivered is called dead or is to be considered dead before the striker has had an opportunity to play it. So if there, for example, is a distraction of the striker after the ball is delivered, but before he or she has had an opportunity to play it, and the striker moves away from the delivery and does not attempt to play at the ball, then we shall call and signal dead ball. And even though that delivery was bowled, it shall not count as a legal delivery in the over and needs to be re-bowled. If a delivery is a no ball or a wide, I'm sure we all know that ball needs to be re-bowled. It does not count as a legal delivery in the over. If a player returns onto the field without the permission of the umpires and comes into contact with the ball will immediately become dead. 5 penalty runs will be awarded to the batting side, and that ball will not count as a legal delivery in the over. It needs to be re-bowled. If there's an instance of illegal fielding, and we will get to the subsequent laws later in our course, then the ball will automatically become dead at the instant of the illegal fielding, and the ball will not be a legal delivery in the over, it needs to be rebowled. If there is a deliberate attempt to distract the striker, or deliberate distraction, deception, or obstruction of either batter after the ball has been bowled, that ball will not be considered a legal delivery in the over. Either umpire shall call and signal dead ball. 5 penalty runs will be awarded to the batting side, and we will find out all of those details in level 2 and level 3 in terms of procedures that need to be followed by the umpires. For level 1, we just need to know that these deliveries, even though the ball has been bowled, will not count as a legal delivery in the over, and the ball needs to be rebowled. Any deliveries other than those listed on the previous slide shall be known as valid deliveries, and only valid deliveries shall count towards the 6 legal balls that constitute an over. When 6 valid balls have been bowled and when the ball becomes dead, the umpire shall call over before leaving his position or her position behind the bowler's end stumps. What happens if umpires miscount? And this does happen. You would think counting to 6 should be simple enough, but unfortunately, for many reasons, we do sometimes lose count. Law tells us that if the umpire miscounts the number of valid balls, the over as counted by the umpire shall stand. So if, for example, we end up allowing a 7th ball to be bowled, that 7th ball in the over will count. If there are runs scored off that 7th delivery in the over, the runs will count. If there is a wicket that is taken on the 7th delivery in an over, that wicket will stand and the batter will be dismissed. You will have a lot of complaints, obviously, from the batting side, but law tells us that if the umpire miscounts the number of valid balls, the over as counted by the umpire and all the balls as noted by the scorers in that over will count towards the scores in the match. If, having miscounted, the umpire allows an over to continue after 6 valid balls have been bowled, he or she may subsequently call over as the ball becomes dead after any delivery, even if that delivery is not a valid ball. Let me give you an example to illustrate this point. In all modes of cricket, a no ball is not considered a legal delivery and usually needs to be rebowled in that over. However, what the law is telling us here is that if we allowed a 7th ball to be bowled because we have miscounted in an over, and that 7th delivery ends up a no ball, and then after that no ball has been bowled, we subsequently discover that that was actually the 7th ball of the over. Law tells us that the no ball will still stand. If there were runs scored off that no ball, they will count. If there was a wicket off that no ball, that wicket will stand. However, because we have now discovered that 6 legal deliveries were bowled in that over before the no ball, we will not allow an extra delivery. We will not allow the no ball to be rebowled. Why? Because we have now discovered, a bit late, but we have now discovered that 6 legal deliveries have previously been bowled in the over. So even after the no ball, we need to call over immediately. Okay, please, ladies and gents, It is very embarrassing if you are found to have allowed a 5-ball over or a 7-ball over, and it can be even disastrous if a wicket falls on the 7th delivery. So what we do as a team of umpires on the field, we help each other with counting. When we get to 3 balls left in an over, the 2 umpires will signal halfway by using one hand around belt height to show that we are halfway through the over. That is the universal signal for 3 balls remaining. Some umpires just put the hand on their waist. Some umpires actually show and move the hand around the waist. Then, of course, when there are 2 balls left, we put up 2 either with your left hand or with your right hand. Just make sure that you are consistent with which hand you use so that your colleague who is about 40 meters away from you knows where to look for your 2. And then for 1, it's useful to have the 1 either down here or in front of you or by the side, not up here, because obviously that looks like an out signal. So the 1 needs to be anywhere other than close to your head. What we also do to help when counting is if there is a no ball, a dead ball, or a wide in the over, we need to reconfirm how many balls are left after that illegal delivery or the non-delivery when it comes to a bowler not releasing the ball, and we call and signal dead ball for that. We also, if there is a fall of a wicket during an over, we do come together as umpires and we need to confirm how many balls are left. Also, if there's a stoppage in play, like an injury or a rain break, we need to, after the end of the stoppage, confirm with our partner how many balls are left. And again, we can do this by means of signaling. If there is a no ball or a wide ball on the first ball of the over, then there are still 6 balls remaining, and the universal signal for 6 balls remaining is a fist. If there's a no ball or a wide after the first legal delivery, then there would be 5 balls remaining. 5 is usually up here. And then if there are 4 balls remaining, either across your chest or down to the side, make sure that your 5 and your 4 are in very different positions, because again, it could be confusing from 40 meters away if your 5 and your 4 are in the same position. Okay, 3, 2, and 1, I've already shown you how to signal. Very important just to confirm these signals with your partner before the start of each day's play, especially if it's the first time that you're umpiring with a certain umpire. That way, we will help each other to make sure we don't have any 5 or 7 ball overs. Is a bowler allowed to change ends? Lord told us earlier that each over is to be bowled from a separate end. For example, at Newlands Cricket Ground here in Cape Town, we have the Wynberg end, which is the south end of the ground, and we have the Kelvin Grove end, which is the north end of the ground. So you cannot have 2 consecutive overs from the Wynberg end or 2 consecutive overs from the Calvin Grove end in the same innings. A bowler shall be allowed to change ends as often as desired, provided he or she does not bowl 2 overs consecutively, nor bowls any part of 2 consecutive overs in the same innings. We spoke about when an over starts. What about when an over is completed? Law tells us that other than at the end of an innings, a bowler shall finish an over in progress unless he or she is incapacitated or suspended under any of the laws. And of course, that is 6 legal deliveries. When the 6th one, the ball becomes dead, that will be the end of the over. If for any reason other than the end of an innings, an over is left uncompleted at the start of an interval or interruption, it shall be completed on resumption of play. Abdullah mentioned a wicket being taken 3 minutes or less before lunch. If that is the second ball of the over, we will take lunch immediately at 11:57 or 58 or 59. And then, or of course, 12 midday, which is our lunchtime schedule. Then after lunch, the same bowler shall complete that over by bowling another 4 legal deliveries. So we had 2 legal deliveries before lunch and then 4 legal deliveries after lunch to complete the 6-ball over. What if a bowler is incapacitated or suspended during an over? Law tells us that if this occurs, then the umpire shall call and signal dead ball, and another bowler shall complete the over from the same end, provided that the replacement bowler does not bowl 2 overs consecutively, nor bowls any parts of each 2 consecutive overs. So that bowler who is replacing the incapacitated or suspended bowler should not have bowled any part of the previous over, nor can he or she bowl any part of the next over. The last law that I am covering this evening before we go into our question and answer session is Law 18, scoring runs. Firstly, we need to define how a run is scored. Law tells us that the score shall be reckoned by runs, and a run is scored so often as the batters at any time while the ball is in play have crossed and made good their ground from end to end. Runs can also be scored when a boundary is scored. On Thursday, we will go through Law 19, which is boundaries, but I'm sure you all know we have boundary 4 and we have boundary 6 as the 2 boundary options in cricket. Penalty runs can also be awarded to either the batting side or the fielding side. That is another way that a team can score runs. What about short runs? Let's learn about short runs. Law tells us that a run is short if a batter fails to make good his or her ground in turning for a further run. So you cannot have a short run if only one run was attempted and completed. It is only in turning for a subsequent run that you can run short. Although a run shortens the succeeding one, the latter, if completed, shall not be regarded as short. Quite importantly, a striker setting off for the first run from in front of the popping crease may do so without penalty. A batter like David Miller likes to bat outside of his crease. Law tells us here that if David Miller hits a shot through the covers and wants to run 1 or 2 or 3 runs, he does not have to go back into his crease to start the first run. He can start the first run from his position outside of his popping crease. No problem there, and it will not be a short run. Law defines 2 types of short runs, an unintentional short run and deliberate short runs. Let's look first at how we as umpires handle unintentional short runs. Law tells us that if either batter runs a short run, the umpire concerned shall call and signal short run when the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. If after either or both batters run short, a boundary is scored, the umpire concerned shall disregard the short running and shall not call or signal short run unless the boundary is a result of an overthrow or willful act of a fielder. What the law is trying to say here is if the batters, the striker hits a ball and it goes towards the boundary, and on turning for the second run, one of the batters runs short. If the ball subsequently goes over the boundary, then we can ignore that short run and merely signal boundary 4. If both batters run short on the same run, this shall be regarded as only one short run. I've never seen it happen before, but what law is trying to tell us here is that if 2 batters attempt 3 runs and on the second turn they both ran short, then it's only one short run, and so 2 runs would be scored by that batting side in that example. If more than 1 run is short, then all runs called as short shall not be scored, and the bowler's end umpire, when finally signaling short run to the scorer, will need to somehow convey the number of runs that were short in that particular delivery or the number of runs that are actually valid in that particular delivery. Good umpiring practice is when a run is short, either umpire, whoever's end the short run occurs, should call and signal to the players immediately that there has been a short run. I can guarantee you, if either umpire calls and signals short run on the first turn, that the batters will make sure, if they're going to run even more in that particular delivery, that they make good their ground for the next run and don't run short on the second turn. So that is why I have never seen or heard of 2 short runs in the same delivery. If you as an umpire call and signal to the players short run immediately as it occurs, the batters will ensure that at least for that particular delivery, they don't run short again. So there has never been, or I've never seen or heard of, more than 1 short run in a single delivery. But if it does happen, you need to get the message to the scorers as to how many runs were short and how many runs should be recorded for that particular delivery. It is easy in provincial and international cricket, where we have communication by way of radios with the scorers, but in club cricket, where you don't have radios, you will need to shout or wait until the next interval to communicate to the scorers how many runs were short and how many runs were scored in that particular delivery where there were more than one short run. To teach us about how to deal with deliberate short runs, we shall watch a video. And this video is courtesy of the Cricket Digest, a very good reference for umpires to learn more about the laws of cricket.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This video is a new addition to the analysis series. Let's get started. On 15th of November 2018, second day of second test match between Sri Lanka and England, a strange incident happened. Let's watch the footage. Looks like a normal short run case, isn't it? Well, that's not the case. Let's see what umpire's decision was. Hugh did not understand what he signaled. He initially disallowed all the runs scored by the batsman on that delivery. Further, he informed the batsman about deliberate short running and awarded 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see what the cricket law has to say about running short. There are two categories in this, unintentional and deliberate. Let's take a look at unintentional short running first. If a batsman runs short, then the umpire shall call and signal short run as soon as the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. For example, if they run 2 and if they run 1 short, then only 1 run will be scored. Now, let's take a look at deliberate short run. Cricket law states that if either umpire considers that one or both the batsmen deliberately ran short, then wait for the ball to become dead and further disallow all the runs scored on that delivery, return the batsmen to their original end, and award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see why the umpire considered this incident as deliberate short running. As you can see, both the batsmen start running and then striker Roshan Silva feels that the ball will reach the boundary. But upon seeing Moeen Ali has stopped the ball, he runs back to the striker's end. But in between, the striker Roshan Silva did not ground the bat at all, which made the umpire to consider this as deliberate short run. If he had at least tried to ground the bat, then most likely that the umpire would not have considered this as a deliberate short run. 5 run penalty for this feels a bit harsh, isn't it? Now let's see why exactly this law exists. In an IPL match between Mumbai Indians and Kings 11, while chasing 231, Mumbai Indians needed 16 runs of the last over. Kieron Pollard, who faces the first ball of the over, strikes the ball and sets off for the run, thinking that he can come back for 2. But upon realizing that he cannot make it, he runs back to the striker's end without completing the first run. And it can be seen that he did that deliberately as he wanted to get back the strike. It is clearly unfair as he got 1 run and also he came back to the strike. To prevent the players from doing such things, this law exists. But in Roshan Silva's case, he was not trying to gain any unfair advantage. But since he did not make any effort to complete the first run, it was ruled deliberate short run. Still have any doubts with this? Do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, then hit the like button and share with all your friends. If you have not subscribed yet, then don't forget to subscribe for more such contents.
So let's summarize our actions as umpires when we discover deliberate short runs. Law tells us that if either umpire considers that one or both batters deliberately ran short, the umpire concerned shall, when the ball is dead, call and signal short run and inform the other umpire of what has occurred. Furthermore, the bowlers and umpire shall disallow all runs to the batting side, as Murray Rasmus did in that particular scenario. Return any not out batters to his or her original end. Signal or no ball or wide to the scorers if applicable. Award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Okay, so that's the big whack against the batting side for deliberate short runs. And we need to inform and report the incident to the governing body in charge of that particular match. So we have seen and learned about unintentional and deliberate short runs and how to deal with each. We now have a scenario for you to judge as a team of umpires. Please watch carefully, and at the end of the video, I want you to type into the chat box 18.1. How many runs are scored by the batting side in this particular delivery? And 18.2, how many runs are awarded to the fielding side, if any, in this particular delivery? Okay, so I'm going to need 2 answers from you. How many runs are scored by the batting side, if any, in this delivery? 18.1, and you type in the number of runs awarded or scored by the batting side. 18.2, how many runs are awarded to the fielding side, if any? So 18.2, and you type in the number of runs awarded to the fielding side, if any. Let's watch the video, and please type in your answers to the chat box afterwards, and we will go through it very soon as this is nearing the end of my presentation.
It's pretty well positioned throw, wasn't it? Nice work, actually. I think they're talking about non-striker perhaps leaving the box, leaving the crease a little bit prematurely, I believe. Oh, there you go. Right, yeah. So, Maxie, no wonder you didn't run him out. It's for a deliberate running short. So Tim David's run down, knew he just had to touch about a metre out of the crease to be able to get back and face the last delivery.
Okay. 18.1, how many runs scored by the batting side, if any? 18.2, how many runs awarded to the fielding side, if any? There are other penalty or runs which are awarded throughout the laws, and we will look at them in subsequent lectures. We've spoken about deliberate short runs today. Next week, we will look at a player returning without permission and coming into contact with the ball. That also attracts 5 penalty runs. Illegal practice on the field can also attract 5 penalty runs after a first and final team warning. A no ball and wide are considered 1-run penalty runs. Illegal fielding also attracts 5 penalty runs. And then if the ball hits an unworn helmet placed on the ground by the fielding side, that would be 5 penalty runs awarded to the batting side. And in laws 41 and 42, there are various incidents of unfair play and misconduct by players, which are punishable by 5 penalty runs. As mentioned, Thursday, we will look at Law 19, boundaries. And that will conclude the different ways that runs are scored. Are runs scored when a batter is dismissed? Law tells us that when a batter is dismissed, any runs for penalties awarded to either side shall stand. So whether it's a no ball or wide, or 5 penalty runs awarded for whatever reason, no other runs shall be credited to the batting side except in the following circumstances. If a batter is dismissed obstructing the field, the batting side shall score any runs completed before the obstruction. If, however, the obstruction prevented a catch from being taken, then no other runs other than penalties shall be scored. If a batter is dismissed run out, the batting side shall also score any runs completed before the wicket was put down. If, however, a striker who has a runner is dismissed run out, any runs completed by the runner and the other batter shall be disallowed. You might be wondering why we're talking about runners when in most competitions around the world, runners have been not allowed for many years now. Law 25, we will learn that runners are still allowed according to the laws of cricket. So we need to still touch on that when it comes to Law 25 next week. Who gets credits for runs? Law tells us that if the ball is struck by the bat, all runs scored by the batting side shall be credited to the striker, except when an award of 5 penalty runs is awarded to the batting side. It shall be classified under penalty runs. The 1-run penalty for no ball will be classified as no balls extras. If the ball is not struck by the bat, runs shall be scored as penalty runs, byes, leg byes, no ball extras, or wides, whichever the case might be. And we will learn about these scenarios next week as well in laws 24, 21, and 22. If byes or leg byes accrue from a no ball, only the 1-run penalty for no ball shall be scored as a no ball extra, and the remainder shall be classified as byes or leg byes, whichever the case might be. The poor bowler, when and what will he or she be debited with? All runs scored by the striker shall go against the bowler's figures. All runs scored as no ball extras shall go against the bowler's figures, and all runs scored as wides shall go against the bowler's figures. Penalty runs awarded to the batting side shall not go against the bowler's figures. Lastly, when do batters have to return to their original ends? Let's look at the modes of dismissals where a not out batter needs to return to his or her original end. If the striker is out bowled, then the non-striker will remain at his or her original end. If the striker is out stumped, the non-striker will remain at the non-striker's end. If the striker is out hit the ball twice, or if either, yes, the striker can only be out hit the ball twice, then the non-striker will remain at the non-striker's end. If the striker is out leg before wicket, then the non-striker will remain at the non-striker's end. If the striker is out hit wicket, then the non-striker will remain at the non-striker's end. The new one that came into effect in October 2022, if a striker is out caught, then the non-striker will remain or return to the non-striker's end, even if the batters had crossed before the instant of the catch being taken. So we do not need to watch anymore as umpires if the batters have crossed at the instant of the catch being taken. Why? Because law tells us that the not out batter shall return to his or her original end when the striker is out caught. So a new batter will always be on strike if the striker is out caught and there are still balls remaining in the over. If the striker is out obstructing the field, where the obstruction or distraction prevents the striker being out caught, or if either batter is out obstructing the field where the obstruction prevented the striker being out caught, then the not out batter will remain or return to his or her original end. That is all we are presenting this evening. Thank you so much for your attendance and your interactions. I am now going into the chat box. Before I go into the chat box, I am going to reshare the 2 or 3 revision questions that I posed to all of you. And we will go through those answers together. So let me just ensure that I'm sharing the right presentation. Bear with me. Share level 1. Okay, so let's go back to Zimbabwe against England in 1996. And I'm going to forward all the way to the scorecard. And this is the critical part of this particular quiz question is, as mentioned, is the result a draw or is it a tie? And I'm going to...
In the history of Test match cricket, a match has been drawn with the scores level.
So there's your answer given by the commentator. The match has been drawn with the scores level. With the scores level is not required in terms of the statement of the result. The correct or complete statement of the result is the match has been drawn. Okay. And why is it drawn and not a tie? You will remember the definition of a tie is that all innings need to be completed. And here you will see the scorecard. England needed 205 runs to win. They achieved 204 runs. So if you add up all of Zimbabwe's scores and all of England's runs in the 2 innings each that they batted for, the runs were equal. But because the 4th innings of the match was not complete, England only lost 6 wickets. That is why the match is considered a draw and not a tie. If England had lost all 10 wickets in that 2nd innings and had scored 204 runs for the runs to be equal, because 10 wickets means that an innings is completed, then only would that match have been a tie if England were 204 all out in their second innings. But because England were only 6 wickets down, their innings was not complete. Therefore, the correct result of this match is a draw. I haven't seen what all of you had typed into the chat box yet, but I will get there shortly. Then we go on to the second revision question, which was to do with the Big Bash League match. And this is, I will share it shortly, clearly a case of deliberate short running by Tim David. So here we have, and I'm going to play it again with no commentary or with the volume off. You can see by the score, it is the last over of the first innings in a T20 match. Tim David is considered a finisher in Australian cricket. He's got 18 runs off 9 deliveries at this stage, and he is trying to face as many of the last few balls of the innings as possible. And so he has deliberately ran short to make sure that he's not run out by a good throw from Glenn Maxwell, and that he makes good his ground, and that he has strike for the next delivery. So now the question here is, how many runs are scored by the batting side? Law tells us that if there is deliberate short running by the either batter, then the umpire that has seen the deliberate short run or where the deliberate short run occurred shall call and signal short run. When the ball is dead, the bowlers and umpire shall disallow all runs to the batting side. So even though they completed the second run, that run will also not count. So how many runs are scored by the batting side? 0 in this particular scenario. How many runs are awarded to the fielding side? The punishment for deliberate short run is 5 penalty runs awarded to the fielding side. So answer to quiz question 18.1 is 0, and answer to quiz question 18.2 is 5. I hope you all understood those quiz questions, and hopefully most of you got them right. I am just going through the chat box now, and I am seeing a lot of zeros for the batting side, which is correct. And I am seeing 5 to the fielding side, which is also correct. Well done. I see somebody has given 1 run to the batting side. That is not correct, because if there is an instant of deliberate short running, we need to disallow all runs to the batting side. Okay, and then the answer to the England versus Zimbabwe match, it is not a tie, it is a draw. Why? Because a tie, all the innings need to be completed for a tie to take place. And of course, the scores being equal. But because England were only 6 wickets down, that innings was not completed. So it is a draw and not a tie. Right. Now we go into the chat box to see if there are any questions from anyone else and comments apart from the answers to the chat box. Right, I'm just scrolling through, and Philip has a question. What if at the time you found out that the scores have The scorers have made a mistake. There was no room for play to continue due to no lights on the ground. Will play be allowed to resume the next morning or any time from the next day in order to get a result? Abdullah, we've come off the field. The scorers had initially told us that the game is complete, but upon further inspection, they realized that actually the winning runs had not been scored. We need to go back to complete the match, but the light has now faded and it would not be safe to continue tonight. Can we play tomorrow morning to conclude the match?
So Tom, look, listening to the question, I assume there's still a day left and it's not the final day. We're not in the last hour, so that is the assumption that I'm making. And because, yes, we still need to score a few more runs. There was a mistake in scoring, or unless a side concedes defeat, which hardly happens, but I mean, the law allows for it. You need to come back tomorrow morning, and the batting side needs to score the winning runs, whatever it is, whether it's 5, 10, they need to come score the runs. Yes, Tom.
Abdullah, what if that was day 5 of a test match and we cannot now play further because the light is poor?
Yeah, so let's say we've reached the last hour, we're in day 5, inclement weather set it in, bad light, so we cannot go back. Then that's the end of the game, and the result will then be a draw.
Thanks for clearing that up, Abdullah. Katarina Else asks, in the instance of a deliberate short run, but the ball was a no ball or a wide, how would you signal it to the scorers and how would it be put on the scoring sheet? Very good question, Katarina. The law does tell us that the penalties for a no ball or a wide will always apply, even if there is deliberate short running. So law tells us, we learned in lecture number 1 that we must signal in the sequence that the events occurred. So the no ball or the wide would have occurred before the short run. And so we signal no ball or we signal wide to the scorers before signaling short run and disallowing the runs that the batting side attempted. In terms of how that would be recorded in the scorebook, you would just record the no ball extra or the 1 wide. You would not record any runs for what the batters have attempted and or completed, because we are disallowing all attempted runs because of the deliberate short run. But the no ball extra or the wide will always stand. I hope that answers your question, Katerina. I do not see any more questions or comments in the chat box. If there are any more questions or comments, please raise your virtual hand and you are welcome to address your question live to the lecture. I have tried to activate all your microphones and your videos. I see that hasn't actually taken effect. So I'm just going to do that as well before I close off the lecture. I did notice somebody very early in the lecture, even before Abdullah started presenting, had their hand up. That hand is no longer up. So I'm not sure who that was and if they maybe had their question answered during our presentation.
I think it was Basil, Tom. His name was Basil.
Correct. Basil it was who had his hand up for quite a bit at the beginning of the presentation. Basil, I hope your question has been answered. I don't see a Basil still in the meeting. Hopefully he joins us again on Thursday and he can address any questions that he might have. I do not see any hands in the meeting room. I do not see any further questions or comments in the chat box. So I'll take this opportunity to thank you all for your attendance and your interaction. On Thursday, we will convene for another lecture, as I see now that a hand has gone up. So let me firstly allow the microphones and the cameras to be activated, and then we will take the hand that is in the air. It is none other than Dr. Irfan Syed from New York. Good afternoon, Doc. Thanks for joining us.
Hey,
the floor is yours.
Good evening, good afternoon to everyone. Tom, nice to see you here, and Abdullah.
You too, Doc.
Thank you. Yeah, regarding the question, the point Abdullah was mentioning, the miscounting balls, like the 6th ball or the 7th ball, even if it is a no ball, in reference to T20 and the limited over, where the free hit comes in picture. So how, as a management of this situation, how the umpires can manage the batting side, because they will be deprived if there is a no ball. The 7th ball was a no ball. So what are the protocols in general to follow, please?
Abdullah, that's bad news for the umpire, bad news for the batting team. You want to take that one, please?
So Doc, we as the umpires shouldn't have allowed the 7th ball in the first place. So now the law allows for us to rectify this. So yes, I know the 7th ball was now a no ball, and the batting side did benefit from any runs that was scored off that particular ball. They'll get the 1 run for the no ball, and they'll get any runs that was scored off that particular ball. But we need to rectify our mistake and not allow another ball to be bowled. So because technically it was 6 legal deliveries was bowled already, and so all the batting side benefit from it is the 1 for the no ball and any runs that they scored, and we need to rectify our mistake, but by calling over. So yeah, that is the gain that the batting side got from that delivery. Yeah, I hear your point, and it should be a free hit, but I mean, that is more of an advantage that the batting side now is going to get. Yeah, unfortunately, not. The only benefit they get is the extra run for the no ball and whatever runs accrued from that delivery. Did I answer your question?
Okay, Abdullah. Yes, Abdullah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Doc.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheers, Doc. Stay warm there in New York. It looks very cold. You are warmly wrapped up in your car.
Yeah, it's only 47 degrees in Fahrenheit.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Keep well, and hope to see you soon again sometime. All the best for your season when it comes around. You're welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Next hand up is Sal Syed. Sal, please unmute your microphone, and you may switch on your camera as well if you wish. The floor is yours.
Sure. Hi. So I'm from New York as well, and Irfan Bhai Doc is the one who actually convinced me to take the training. So thanks to him. It's really interesting. I'm loving it. I'm a big time cricketer. I've played cricket my whole life, and I love cricket. It's in my blood. And it's amazing how now I'm getting to the point where I think I'll be helping a lot of people enjoy the game and, kind of serve the justice and be someone who will have the authority to ensure that all the cricket laws are properly implemented. So I'm very excited. And thank you for having me in the session as well. So my question is, in these sort of situations or scenarios, if there's a disagreement between the both umpires, so right, like, one umpire says it's deliberate and the other one says it's not. Well, what should be done? So who take precedence? Is the one who's on the striker's end or who's on the baller's end umpire? Or how will that be resolved?
Sal, that's a very good question. And a lot of people refer to the bowler's end umpire as the main umpire. However, the jurisdiction of the short run and the deliberate short run is dependent on where the short run happens. So if the short run happened at the striker's end, then it is the striker's end umpire who will decide if it was a deliberate short run or if it was a unintentional short run. You must remember that the bowler's end umpire would have been looking at his batter to check if that batter ran short or ran complete in terms of turning for the next run. So Abdullah, maybe you can advise if you agree or disagree, but I would say that it is completely up to the umpire where the short run occurred to decide if that short run was unintentional or if it was deliberate.
I mean, that makes sense logically speaking. And I would assume that it is fair to implement the same logic for all other decisions as well. Whichever end the umpire is, that person will make the final call compared to the other one, correct? In other scenarios as well.
So, Sal, we will learn later in the laws that the striker's end umpire is, in terms of jurisdiction, allowed to adjudge a run out at his or her end, a stumping, as well as hit wicket. All other dismissals are for the bowler's end umpire to make the decision.
So then, sorry, the no ball, the shoulder height no ball is one of the critical ones. You did not mention.
Right. That's always a point of discussion. And the law there says the umpire shall judge whether the ball is above shoulder height or above head height, and for a full toss, whether it's above waist height. It does not specify which umpire. So good practice as teamwork is the umpire who is in the best position to judge the height of the delivery should make that call. Who do you think is in the best position to make that call, the height of a delivery?
I think leg umpire has a better view.
Correct. The striker's end umpire is in the better position to judge the height of a short pitch delivery, whether it's above shoulder height, below shoulder height, above head height, or just below head height. And of course, a full toss, whether it's just below, on, or just above waist height. And so we advise that the striker's end umpire, and I refer to it as the striker's end umpire, not the square leg umpire, because they can also stand at point. But the striker's end umpire should own that call. And although the final signal to the scorers will be made by the bowler's end umpire, the call should be owned by the striker's end umpire, because he or she is in the best position to judge the height of the short pitch delivery or the full toss. When and if a striker's end umpire missed the ball completely for whatever reason, then he or she should signal to the bowler's end umpire that I did not see the ball, and then the bowlers and umpire can make the judgment on the height of the delivery. I hope that answers your question. Yes, you're back on mute, Sal.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Yes, you did. I appreciate it. Back to you.
Great stuff. Sal, thank you for your attendance and your interaction, and hope to see you and everybody else on Thursday. Same time, same place, same meeting link. And please do all enjoy the rest of your day further. Thank you and good night.